Yes, Mr. President, thank you so much. I also want to take this opportunity to thank Laurie Brocker, the dedicated team of public servants, the best team of any state senate in the entire country. In a moment, I'll speak to the constitutionality of what we're doing here today with our final vote. But first, I want to make mention of 1919. The last time that Oregon was in the throes of a global pandemic, one that we hope we will never see again. In the 1919 session, there was a 29-year-old first-term legislator. His name was John Stannard. He had 4 boys. His wife, Mary, and he were traveling from Gold Beach to the Oregon State Capitol when John got a fever. He stopped in Bandon. He went into the hospital. He and his wife, several days later, perished, and he never made it to the state capitol from the Spanish Influenza. His 4 boys were distributed to 4 different orphan homes. In 1919, in Portland, there were debates in the city council over requiring masks after Henry Pittick, the Oregonian newspaper editor, passed away from the flu. In 1919, during that last pandemic, it was 3 years after Catherine Clark, the first woman, was elected to the Oregon State Senate. But in 1919, when we walked those halls, if you could have seen yourself, and you can see them on the photos on the wall outside the Secretary of the Senate's office when you look on your way back, when that pandemic was raging, there were 30 white men, 3 Democrats from rural Oregon, and the Republicans held every seat in Portland and the Willamette Valley. Sounds a little bit different. And as I've stated today, the Constitution that frames our Senate rules provides sufficient flex to bend and grow over a century and beyond. These rules aren't ordained, but they can be carefully sharpened within the safeguard of a constitutional framework that at its core, at the core of our democracy, rejects the notion of a divine right of kings. As we meet and deliberate over the rules of the 81st Legislative Assembly, I would challenge us to look through the lens of multiple truths of Oregon's history. That mural that I mentioned earlier, I look at this mural and I see an image of a celebration in a city. March 17th, St. Patrick's Day, when word reaches from Congress accepting Oregon as the 33rd state, the Union. To accept that as the truth, as the only truth, can be opaque and incomplete. It's a 2-dimensional painting. It's imperfect. And to talk about our body that way is also selective. The full truth is that, yes, these founders were excited about their future as a state. They were rugged, yes. As we heard from the Senate president, they were pioneers, yes. But they also benefited from laws that allowed and permitted and sometimes flatly encouraged the stealing of lands, the labor, and the lives of others. To peek around the corner of that celebration is a fuller truth. A state where women were often subject, sexual minorities were threatened with murder, when Oregon's place as a free state came with the condition that no one with African ancestry could live free, or own property, or gain suffrage rights, let alone stand or preside in this chamber. Yes, there is a stain, there is a blot on that canvas that we can't see, but it is also part of our truth of Oregon, part of the beauty of our Constitution and our rules today is that it allows us to keep painting another picture of who we are. And that building that they stand in, that building, it doesn't exist anymore. In fact, the one that I told you about that John Stannard was driving to in 1919, it doesn't exist. It burned a dozen years later. But what we heard from the citing of Article 4, Section 14 of the Oregon Constitution didn't have to do with the building. It had to do with open deliberation about discourse, public discourse, as it relates to the laws of this state. When we look at comparator states in California, we can also look to Idaho, where the governor there, the Republican governor, asked the legislature, please honor public health guidelines and don't open. Their legislature decided, because they had the constitutional right to do so, to open the doors. Washington, in driving down this morning, I was listening to the radio. They're meeting right now, and they're doing exactly what Oregon is doing. They are meeting remotely until we can get through the worst phases of this global pandemic, to when we all wish that we could open the doors again to the people. But what we're doing here is not about a building. It's not about us walking through the rails, the swinging doors, the black walnut desks, treading lightly on the Chinook and the sweet, adored carpet. It's about the ideals. Oregon's constitutional roots are strong, and they're embedded in discourse, thoughtful discourse. The ability to show up, to debate, and not through violent action, but in words and thoughts, because the lives of those we represent demand us that we show up to this job. If for some notion that we are thought to have overreached in the Constitution, we have separation of powers. You have a legal right, anyone does, to file suit in court to challenge whether or not what we're doing today meets the constitutional definition of open deliberation. And finally, Mr. President, as we consider these rules today, standing in this city of Salem, I want to highlight one name of those 30 or those 69 that encircle our heads. William H. Wilson, middle name Holden. He arrived in Oregon in 1837. Wilson was also elected treasurer of the provisional government at Champoeg. And in 1846, William H. Wilson platted and named Salem, choosing the name because it means city of peace, like Jerusalem. Over 25 states in this nation have Salems, but we are the only one that nests our state capital. The word Salem is ancient. In Hebrew, shalom, to be whole or complete. I have a feeling my colleague might be laughing at my pronunciation right now. In Arabic, it translates to salam, assalamu alaikum, the Arabic greeting meaning peace be unto you. The Christian Bible in John 20:21, peace be unto you. But our Constitution guarantees that no one faith tradition, in fact, a faith tradition isn't required for public service. It's embedded in the Constitution. So in that spirit, Mr. President, with malice toward none, I reach out my hand to the spirit of these rules, to the history of our Oregon Constitution, and I ask for your support for the Senate rules today.